All right, so back to our examination of Pilgrim's Progress tonight. I apologize to those of you who are visiting. I don't have more copies of the version that we are using, but I have made a note to order some tomorrow. So by next week, hopefully they'll be here. We are using an abridged version of Pilgrim's Progress. In between the passage that we finished, or the section that we finished last week, and this one, there are one or two sections that are not found, and a number of other folks that are mentioned in the original Pilgrim's Progress. I had seriously considered bringing some of them, but then I realized, no, that defeat the whole purpose of me using the abridged one that I'm using, because I don't want to be in this book until I die. Okay? So, and at the rate I'm going, at the rate I'm going and at the speed at which the years are passing, I may very well wind up being in that case, and I don't want to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over those extra chapters and use just the section that we're in. We come tonight to a section entitled Vanity Fair. And this is, as you notice in the booklet, it's quite long. It's actually 2 and a partial pages in length, about 2 full pages in length. And so Bunyan obviously, again, believes this is an important topic to consider on Christian's journey from the city of destruction to the celestial city, the city of the King that he is pursuing, the path that he's walking on. And we have another example here of that which we, as followers of Christ, as those also walking this path to the celestial city, will encounter. So this is another example that Bunyan puts before us of that which we're going to have to deal with as we walk along as believers. So let me read a bit of it, and then I want to step back and make some discussion of some things that are being spoken of here. And specifically, I want to read the first paragraph. Bunyan writes, "Then I saw in my dream," now remember, this is a man who is telling a story about a man who is having a dream about a man who's on a journey. Okay? If that's confusing, well, take it up with Bunyan. "Then I saw in my dream that when they were got out of the wilderness," that is, when Christian and faithful got out of the wilderness, "they presently saw a town before them, and the name of that town is Vanity. And at the town there's a fair kept called Vanity Fair." Okay, so it makes sense. The fair in the middle of the town called Vanity is called Vanity Fair. All right. "It is kept all the year long. It bears the name of Vanity Fair because the town where it is kept is lighter than vanity, and also because all that is there sold, or that comes thither, is vanity, or that all that comes out of it is vanity. As is the saying of the wise, all that comes is vanity." All right. Now, obviously, at this point, we need to stop and talk about, okay, what is vanity? Okay. If you look in the dictionary, you will discover there are 3 distinct definitions of the word vanity. The first one is found in your bathroom. You can buy a vanity at Home Depot and put it in your bathroom. It's typically a box of some sort with a sink on the top or some other sort of desktop-like thing. Typically has a mirror in front of it, and you stand there and do your morning beautification process, whatever that might look like. For some of you, that process is very long. For others of you, that process is very short. We'll say no more. A vanity, in this case, is some sort of device. Now, I don't really know the etymology of where the word vanity in that sense came from, but I suspect it might be from the second definition of the word. And the second definition of the word vanity is a overly expressive form of personal pride, a sense of having a vanity in oneself. In fact, it's excessive pride in or admiration of one's own appearance or achievements. So it's that sense of looking upon yourself and thinking, wow, look how special I am. That's a vanity. Maybe that's where the word for the sink comes from, because as you stand there and look at the mirror, you may be thinking, look how great I look, now that I've applied all this makeup and hair gel and all these other things. In my case, no amount of that is going to help. So it's possible that the first definition comes from the second definition, that sense of excessive pride or admiration of yourself. All right. But that's not the definition that Bunyan is using. In fact, Bunyan is using really an Old English definition of this word, a longer or more, not longer, but a more broader sense of this word, which is the sense of things that are worthless or futile, hollow, shallow, without substance, having a sense of appearance of that which is substantive, but really not. It has the perception of being that which is real, but in the end is futile. Now, where, of course, is this word most used that we would first go to and think of as believers? The book of Ecclesiastes. In fact, you will notice that even Bunyan himself quotes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times from Ecclesiastes, or notes 5 different references to Ecclesiastes. He starts with Isaiah chapter 40, verse 7, in which it says, "The Lord looks upon the nations of the earth." Let me just quote it exactly. "He looks upon the nations as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness or vanity." He looks upon the world and he sees futility, etc. Now, obviously, in the book of Ecclesiastes, you see it in verse 2 of the book. "Vanity of vanity," says the preacher. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Down in verse 14, "I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind." Chapter 2, verse 11, "Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it. Behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun," and so on. The writer, Solomon probably, says, I've done so much, I've built so much, I've had so much, and now it's futile. It means nothing. It has no lasting value. Let me give an illustration to help you understand what I'm talking about, what this word means. This one's a little personal. In the 1980s and the 1990s, I spent tens of thousands of hours, by my calculations, roughly 30 to 40,000 hours, writing software, dedicated day after day after day to doing so. Wrote it. I came up with the ideas of it, sketched it out, coded it, debugged it, distributed it, taught about it, talked about it, and the list goes on and on, of all these things that I did with it. And today, 25 years later, it does not exist. All of it. Everything I wrote from roughly 1981, when I took my first job as a computer programmer, until I left the company in Birmingham in 2000, all of it. None of it exists. Not a single byte of it, anywhere. And even if it did exist, it's probably written on devices that you couldn't read anymore. I mean, very much like me, you handed me an 8-track tape and said, "Here, I've got something I want you to listen to." It's vanity. It has no lasting value. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's the picture that's being painted in this word by the writer of Ecclesiastes. It's like, I built and I had these ideas and all these things, and I brought them to fruition. I spent my life doing them, and guess what? There are no more. They have no lasting value. Now, let me put that across in a different sort of way. Think about it like this. When Adam was formed from the dust of the ground, he was given a mandate to go and take dominion over the whole world. He was told to be fruitful and multiply and take dominion over all that existed. I think the assumption in there is that he was to, along with the help of his wife and his children, to go and use his immense intellect and creativity and language and all these other things that he was given by virtue of the Imago Dei, to go and make things, build things, construct things. And I think that all of the things that Adam would have built in his unfallen state would have been permanent. They would have lasted. They would have been built to the glory of God. Because he built them. Because God had given him the ability to do so. He was forming that which was that which would bring glory to God. And if he had not eaten from the tree, then this world would be filled with all kinds of things that have been around since the dawn of time. Because there would have been no reason for them to fall apart and disappear. But when sin entered the world, when he ate from the tree, when God cursed him to return to the dust of the ground from which he was formed, I think that extended also to everything that man would form, such that it too would fall back to the dust of the ground from which it's formed. In 2005, I went to Turkey and to Greece and tromped around on numerous archaeological sites, more than 60 of them. And with the exception of a few columns and maybe a few buildings that still existed from so long ago, the vast majority of it was nothing more than ruins. Maybe a few stones that had lasted. Of the 7 churches of Revelation, for example, I visited all 7 locations. There's one of them, I forget which one now. It's nothing but a pile of rocks in the middle of a city park. That's it. Little pile of rocks about yay big. That's it. That's all that's left of it. Everything under the sun, made by man, goes back to the dust of the ground from which it is formed. This is the cry of the writer of this book, Ecclesiastes. Everything I build doesn't last. Nothing lasts. Everything is going to go back to the dust of the ground. We're going to have a work day in a couple of weeks because if we don't, the building will eventually go back from where it came. And even then, we struggle against the forces of corruption that bring it back to where it's going to be. Let me flip that over for you and think about it like this. The second Adam comes to take dominion, and what he builds lasts forever. When he says to Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church," he builds a thing, and that thing lasts forever. Because the Son of God is coming to do what the first Adam failed to do. The second Adam comes to actually accomplish things, build things that have lasting value in the world, to overturn the curse. So the writer here in Ecclesiastes says it's all vanity. Everything we do as human beings, it just falls apart. But that which the Lord builds, now it lasts forever. So Bunyan picks up this word, vanity, from Ecclesiastes, I'm sure, and uses it to describe a city by the name of Vanity. And what he says is there is a town there called Vanity, and what he's describing, if you will, is the world. The whole world, this world on this side of the curse, the reality of the world in which we live, the reality of this world in which we live, which is characterized by its vanity. He's picturing the reality that human beings have to live in this place of futility and hollowness, where nothing lasts, and so it goes. Just as an aside, I was thinking about this afternoon. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, ooh, this is a good place to put this in. I saw a video the other day about, it's gone viral, about what happens after you die, okay? And it's talking about how the fact that, okay, after you die, people go to the funeral and they think about you for a while and then they mourn over you. And then they eventually, they leave the funeral home and they go out and live and they go back to their work and they go back to their lives and pretty soon you're forgotten. And the upshot of the video was, well, you know what? It's this life and then you're gone. So grab for all the gusto you can now, because when you're gone, no one's going to care. That's the upshot of it, which is exactly wrong from a Christian perspective, right? Because from a Christian perspective, what we say is, no. This is not all there is. This life may, in fact, that may be true, that everybody forgets who you are, but you are not done at that point. Their assumption is, okay, it's all over when you die, you're forgotten, and so this is the only life there is. We would say, no, not according to what's been revealed in the Word. That no, there is more beyond this life. And so we don't just live for this life. In fact, I would argue that everybody in the video who's arguing, or the guy that's voicing it over is arguing that this life is all there is, has in fact bought into the idea of vanity, because he's saying you can overcome the vanity by your living. Nuh-uh. No, you can't. No, you can't. So this is Bunyan's way of picturing the idea of the world. Okay, that's a biblical term which is used in a number of different ways. The Greek word cosmos is used in a number of different ways in the New Testament. One way, of course, it's used, it's the most basic sense of the place we live in. Okay? For God so loved the world, this world in which we live, and all the people that are in it. But there's a pejorative way the word is used as well. When we say be in the world, okay, we mean we have to be here physically, but be not of the world, there's a different sense to that second use of the word, isn't there? So be in this place, but not be of this place. In fact, later in this chapter, the writer is going to speak about the fact that if you want to get away from those who are sinners, you're going to have to leave the world. Okay, he quotes from Paul about that, right? If you want to get away from the swindlers, you're going to have to leave the world to get away from the swindlers. We live in this world, we have to live in this world, but there is a world around us. And that world around us is the systems of thinking that permeate this fallen world. The systems of thinking, the systems of sinful, corrupted systems that govern the way this world works. That's where Bunyan is going to be going here when he's describing Vanity, the city of Vanity, and the fair that's in it. He's describing the reality that we live in a place that is in fact being governed by systems which are fundamentally opposed to God's ways, God's law, we would even say, such that it is as though we are living in a place where the systems all around us are designed to destroy us. Okay? In contrast to what God originally established for man to thrive and prosper in the world that he had created. So this pejorative use of the word world, I think, is what Bunyan is meaning when he uses this word vanity to describe the city. And he says, you will notice, that you have to go through this city. Okay? Which we'll get to in a moment. All right, so Bunyan starts off by saying, all right, there's a town called Vanity. It's a representation of this fallen world in which we live, and inside that city, or inside this world, is a system of thinking which is designed to control you and manage you and so forth. Okay? Vanity, the city, Vanity Fair, the fair inside. All right? And Bunyan goes on to explain that more as he goes along. So, paragraph 2. This fair is no newly erected business, but a thing of ancient standing. I will show you the origin of it. Okay, so he says, okay, let me tell you where it started. Almost 5,000 years ago, there were pilgrims walking to the celestial city, as these two honest persons are. So just like Christian and faithful, 5,000 years ago, there were two that were walking. Who were they? Adam and Eve. That's probably who he's referring to. Given the length of time that he expresses here, he's probably referring to the very beginning of time. Okay, so 5,000 years ago, all right? 5,000 years ago, there were two pilgrims who were walking on this way to the celestial city, as these two honest persons were. Okay, so what he's saying is this started all the way back then. And Beelzebub, Apollyon, and Legion, with their companions, perceiving by the path that the pilgrims made that their way to the city lay through this town of Vanity, they decided to erect along the path this system of vanity. So what's he describing? What's he describing? No, not the garden. Sin, but he's describing specifically the fall. He's describing specifically the fact that these two pilgrims 5,000 years ago had to walk through what was set up by whom? The devil. Now he names them Beelzebub, and we've already met Apollyon earlier as a demon. And Legion, as we know, is a name that's associated with a horde of demons. Okay, a group of demons. Okay, so and he mentions their companions. Okay, so imagine a whole system of demonic beings with Beelzebub as their head, Apollyon as one of their greatest, and so on, you see. And so what do these folks, Beelzebub, Apollyon, Legion, and others, want to do? Well, they want to make the two pilgrims, the original two pilgrims that we're talking about, walk through this place. Well, that's a description of the fall. He's picturing how this started. You see, I got my implications, my indications, I should say, of my description of vanity from what Bunyan is pointing to. When did this start? It started when Adam and Eve walked through vanity and bought something from one of the street vendors, quote unquote. Okay? That's the picture he's painting. Again, remember, this is an allegory, so he's using a story-like thing to describe the fall as these two original pilgrims go through. They contrived here to set up a fair wherein should be sold all sorts of vanity, and that it should last all the year long. That this place, all these shallow, futile, hollow things would permeate this place all the time. That was their goal. Look, make no mistake about it. You could read Genesis chapter 3 for yourself. You know as well as I do that what it was that the devil wanted to do was to get Adam and Eve, starting with Eve and then Adam, to take their eyes off of that which is permanent and put it on what is temporary. To take their eyes off of God and put their eyes on themselves. To take their eyes off what is good, to take their eyes off what is the best and put their eyes on what was good. Or as one preacher once said very wisely, never let the good crowd out the best. They allowed the good, or what they thought was good, to crowd out the best. The devil came along and said, you'll be like God. Isn't that a good thing? And Eve should have go, but it's not the best. It's not the best. So here's the picture that he's painting. So this city, this man says, who's having this dream, he's watching Christian and faithful walk down this path, they're walking this path, towards the celestial city, and they come to this city, and he's describing it as an ancient city that started all the way back at the beginning when Beelzebub and his friends convinced the two original pilgrims to walk through this city and buy some wares, and guess what happens? Therefore, at this fair are all such merchandise sold: houses, honors, kingdoms, lusts, pleasures, and delights of all sorts, as bodies, souls, silver, gold, pearls, and whatnot. See how he's describing it? A place where you can buy all kinds of things that are all about your pleasure, pride, contentment, or what you think is those things, because they are not real. They're not real. They're not actually able to make you happy. They're not able to actually make you content. They're not able to actually satisfy you. They're not actually able to make real substance. They're vanity. They're futile. They're but shadows. Now, let me just stop and point something out here, which should be obvious to you, right? We are creatures that live in a physical world, are we not? God created us to live in a physical world. So by definition, we are reliant upon a physical world for our survival even, right? You're sitting there breathing the air, and you had lunch today, and you're wearing clothes and so forth because you are beholden to the things of this world. That's how it was. And that's how it was from the beginning. That's always been. We are material creatures. But there's a difference between being a material creature and living in this world and finding your passions, your purposes, all of what you want to accomplish in the things of this world. Because here's the problem, as should be obvious. None of it lasts. And no matter how hard you try, you can't take it with you. You never see a hearse pull in a U-Haul. You can't take it with you. Oh, you may say, oh, I could do all kinds of great things with it. You know, if somebody gave me $1 billion, imagine what I could do with that. Look at all the good I could do with that. How many of you are familiar with John D. Rockefeller? Some of the older folks are like, oh, I know that. Some of the younger folks are, who? We don't really think much of him anymore, do we? Nobody really spends much time thinking of John D. Rockefeller. At one time, he was the richest man that lived on this planet. But he's gone. And others have come and take his place. The point being, the point of all that is to say, these things are illusions. They appear to have substance. And even though you think you could take $1 billion and do all kinds of good things, even all those good things you do are but shadows and substance without substance. And they don't last either. Think about Solomon. Richest person, wisest man. Not exactly sure what that meant, given that he had 700 wives. He looks upon his life, okay, and he looks upon the temple, which was his crowning achievement, right? He builds this temple to the Lord. And yet, at the end of his life, he writes this. It's vanity. It's all vanity. Because he knows full well that even that temple is not going to last. Right? At some point, the Assyrians and the Babylonians are going to swoop in and destroy it. Now, he doesn't know that himself, but he knows full well that it's not going to last. It's not going to stay around forever. It's going to be replaced by something else. That's the way it's going to go. In fact, if I might use my illustration more properly here, Solomon built a temple that wasn't going to last. But Christ is building a temple that will last forever. A temple that the God will actually indwell forever, will last forever. All the things that we possess are but shadows, and they have no substance. In fact, there is more empty space in this pulpit here than there is actual substance in it. There's more empty space in this pulpit than there is actual substance in it. And you go, what? It's an illusion. Feels hard. Seems like substance. Feels like I can feel that. But if you were to bore down and look all the way down to the atomic level of this particular thing, what you would find is that the vast majority of this thing, which seems solid, is actually vacuum. The vast majority of it is vacuum. In fact, it's nothing but electrical energy, light energy, in fact, that has been built in such a way as to give it the illusion of substance. Now, it's substantive from our perspective as God has created it. And we look at it and think, oh, it's got real substance to it. But like everything else, it is in itself that which does not have real substance. That's where vanity is. Now, let me be clear. When God created the world, he called it good, which means that when he created the physical realities, they are good. Objects in this world, like this pulpit, are in fact good from a amoral perspective. Okay? It doesn't have a moral reality to it other than that it is. The fact is that God did in fact create a world that it is good, and he created us from the dust of the ground and put us in this world. And so in a sense, everything is good. I know your objection will be something to the effect of, well, are you saying that everything is worthless? No. I'm saying that everything has value from God's perspective, but so much of what constitutes the world is how men in their fallen state have taken this world and all of what's in it and turned it into that which is futile. Okay, see the difference? It's not that the objects themselves are futile. It's that man have turned them into things that are futile. The temple that Solomon built wasn't futile. God purposed for that temple to be useful to the people of Israel. But from Solomon's perspective, after he built it and set in motion all that he was building and went, well, it's eventually going to go away, it's going to be replaced by something else. He looks upon it and says, where's the value, where's the eternal value in that structure of stone? The eternal value is found in the one who created it, not in the substance itself. That's where the futility lies. We have a tendency to do precisely that. We value the things of this world simply because they are things, rather than valuing who created them. And that's where the fall went. It went from Eve looking at the creator of the tree to looking at the fruit of the tree and putting her focus on the fruit rather than on the maker of the tree. That's the futility I'm talking about. So don't mistake me to say that these things don't have value. They have value. They're substantive because God made them to be good. The problem is that in our sinful state, we are condemned to return to the dust of the ground along with all that we create. There is no permanence in them. So what we need is that which is permanent. And we're told where that is, right? That's in the one who is building an eternal temple that's permanent. And the one who is building a kingdom that is permanent. And the one who will, according to the book of Romans, chapter 8, redeem all things and bring them all, including the physical world, to a state of permanence and glory of God. Because that's what he's doing. So, at this fair are all this merchandise sold. It's being sold to us as human beings as things we think are valuable, but are illusions. They're not really valuable at all. And moreover, at this fair, there is at all times to be deceivers, cheats, games, which means those who are gaming the system, fools, knaves, liars, and rogues, and that of every kind. So not only is this world filled with things that we take for ourselves and treat them as though they have value, even though they're not valuable, but there's also those trying to convince us that they are. There's rogues and liars of all kinds that are trying to take this world and sell it to us, just as the one who sidled up to Eve tried to sell her on something to take and eat. Okay? You see where Bunyan's going here? Now notice the third paragraph. Now, as I said, the way to the celestial city lies just through this town, where the lusty fair is kept. And he that will go to the city and yet not go through this town must needs go out of the world. There's the quote I was talking about before, 1 Corinthians 5:10. What he's saying is, look, the only way out of this is to go out of the world. Okay, and he's quoting from Paul, who says that if you want to avoid the swindlers and the cheats and all the others in the world, the only way you're going to do that is go live somewhere else. And where is that? Well, there isn't such a place, because they're all around us. I might put it like this: even if you were to go by yourself to the moon and live there, you would still be amongst the swindlers and the cheats. You know why? Because you're there. Okay, so you got to go through this city. This is the reality. Human beings are born into this world where all of this material reality around us is being shoveled at us as though it is valuable in itself. And I think Western civilization has done an extraordinarily good job of making that true. The Prince of Princes himself, when here, went through this town to his own country. Who's that? That would be Christ. That would be Jesus Christ. He is the Prince of Princes in this scenario. So Bunyan says, okay, let me give you an example here of this reality. Jesus himself, when living, had to live in this same world, where all of this material world that's being shoveled at us as being valuable was shoveled at him. Now, let's be clear. We know, do we not, that the Son of God, the eternal glorious one from the Father's side, willingly entered into this estate, purposely entered into the estate that we live in. He came to experience Vanity Fair. He knows we live in it. He knows we have a problem dealing with it. He came into this world because the only way he could produce redemption is by going through that himself successfully to make redemption for us. Or, in other words, to say it more theologically, he's the only one that went through Vanity Fair without being affected by Vanity Fair. And thus he can become our righteousness. The Prince of Princes himself, when here, went through this town to his own country, and that upon a fair day too. And as I think, it was Beelzebub, the chief lord of this fair, that invited him to buy of his vanities. Yea, would have made him lord of the fair, would he have done him reverence, as he, Jesus, went through the town. What's he referring to? He's referring to the temptations. You see, he notes Matthew 4:8 and Luke 4:5-7 in here, which both account for the temptations of Christ that he endured, as we see listed there. Yea, because he was such a person of honor, that is, yea, because Jesus was such a person of honor, Beelzebub had him, that is Jesus, from street to street, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a little time. He took him up on a high mountain and showed him all the things of the world. And I think the word world there is being used in that pejorative sense. Let me show you all this world and all of what's in it and all of its substance, its pleasures, its systems and everything. And the devil simply said, I will give all this to you if you'll simply bow down to me. Now, the glorious irony of that is that the one who stood before the devil on that high mountain is the one who made all things and is the one who's the king of all things. But the devil could make an actual temptation of him because by coming into the flesh, he was under the reality of Vanity Fair, under this worldly system in which he had been born into, voluntarily and willingly. So it was a real temptation. But he stood and said, and of course the devil's trying to get him to take a shortcut, right? You can have all these kingdoms if you'll just bow down to me. And Jesus is thinking, no, I will have all of these kingdoms. All of this will belong to me, but it won't be by bowing to you. It will be by going to a cross. So it won't be me bowing down to you, but it will be me giving myself into your hand to crucify me. And God will raise me from the dead, and I will then I should say, have all of this to be mine. He was such a person of honor. What Bunyan is saying, he's such a person of such character that he was able to understand what this world is all about and what his purpose was, and to not fall to the lies that this is all that matters, which is at the core of vanity, is it not? But he had no mind to the merchandise, and therefore left the town without laying out so much as one farthing upon these vanities. He didn't put a penny to anything. He left without laying any such thing. This fair, therefore, is an ancient thing of long standing and a very great fair. We live in this world. This is the reality of the world around us. It wants our attention. It wants us to buy into its systems. It wants us to believe that these things around us, money and fame and prosperity and all these other things, that they are to be had. Come, I will give you these things, and they will be of great value to you. But the problem is, they're vanity. They have no substance, especially no lasting substance. Top of the page. Now, these pilgrims, as I said, must needs go through this fair. Well, so they did. But when the pilgrims entered the fair, there was such a hubbub about them, for their clothes and speech were different, such that few could understand what they said. Now, what Bunyan points out is, here's the thing. The Christian, the one who has come to Christ and truly knows the gospel, is going to look and sound different than the world. That is why if you do a search of the word world in the New Testament, and look at all the passages that have this word, and look specifically at all the passages that use the word world pejoratively in this sense that I've been using it, of the negative systems of this world. You look at all of them, and there's many of them. I mean, I could bring you 20 of them. The point of them, all of them, is to make this fact that we are living in this reality. We have to go through this, but there's a distinction between those who belong to the world and those who do not. Those who are taken out of the world by Christ, if you will. We're not taken out of the physical reality of living on this planet. That can't happen. But we are taken out of the systems of this world. We are no longer under the power of the systems of this world. I think this is why Paul could say in Romans 6, sin will have no dominion over you, because the idea is that these systems will no longer have dominance over us. Why? Because Christ has taken dominion over it all. And those who come to him now belong to him. They don't belong any longer to the systems of this world. And so when Christian and faithful walk into this town, in this allegory, right, they look different. They sound different. They're not like the rest. Their focus is not on the things of this world. They're not easily swayed by the things of this world. Their focus is where? Their focus is on the celestial city where Christ is. Their focus is not on the temporal things of this world. Nothing in the fair was interesting to them because they knew something. What did they know? They knew that everything being sold at the Vanity Fair had no substance, had no lasting power. It wasn't real. I'm not buying it. Why would I give myself over to that? The fruit that Eve ate from the tree was not real. No, it was real in the sense of it had physical substance. She ate it. She gave some to her husband. He ate it. But the promise behind it was not real. It was a lie. You'll be like God, knowing good and evil. And what they thought was going to be true was not true. Something else was true. Oh yes, they would know good and evil. But now they would know good and evil from an experiential sense, which would lead to their deaths. They're different. They naturally spoke the language of Zion. In the original, it's Canaan, by the way. But for some reason, they decided to change it to Zion here. They naturally spoke the language of Zion, which is the language of the celestial city they're going to, the language of Christ. But they that kept the fair were the men of this world, so that from one end of the fair to the other, they seemed barbarians each to each other. One of the things about this world is that even the people who are in it, who look to the things of this world for their comforts and satisfactions and happinesses, what do they have to do in order to have those comforts and happinesses and so forth? They have to climb all over each other to get them. It's a eat or be eaten world in this thing. Because for you to have pleasure, for you to have, you got to take from somebody else. It's always worked that way. It's always worked that way. That's the way this world works. There's only so much to go around, and if you've got most of it, I've got nothing, well, that's how it works. And so here we have these pilgrims who look around at the barbarians. Now, to the people of the city, those who came in, these two that came in, they also look like barbarians too, because they look different from us. Wait a minute. Wait. Who are these two? And why don't they seek after the things we're seeking after? Why don't they value what we value? They're just barbarians. But that which did not a little amuse the merchandisers was, okay, let me rephrase that. This was something they didn't like. Here's what they didn't like. That these pilgrims sat very light by all their wares. They cared not so much as to look upon them. If they called upon them to buy, in other words, if the merchants called upon Christian and faithful to buy something, they, that is Christian and faithful, will put their fingers in their ears and cry, "Turn away my eyes from beholding vanity and look upwards," signifying that their trade and traffic was in heaven, not in the world. These people of the city were greatly disturbed by the fact that Christian and faithful wouldn't buy their stuff, because their focus was not on the stuff, their focus was on heaven. And you will notice the two quotations. I'll skip the Psalm 19 one, but go to Philippians 3, which you're probably very familiar with because not too long ago I preached through that book, remember? Probably forgotten, right? Philippians chapter 3, 19 and 20. Go to verse 18. "For many of whom I have often told you, and now tell you even with tears, walk as enemies of the cross of Christ." The sellers in the world, They walk as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their end is destruction. Their God is their belly, and they glory in their shame with minds set on earthly things. But our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who will transform our lowly body to be like his glorious body by the power that enables him even to subject all things to himself. We are waiting for a greater thing, which is promised to us. Their God is their belly, what they can eat, what they can enjoy out of the physicalities of this world. The Christian and faithful are, nope, our glory is in heaven, in that which Christ has established, not in the things that Beelzebub and his friends have established in this world. Taking what God had called good and corrupting it now into something which becomes a fake good to us. The Christian is distinguished from the world by what he loves. The Christian loves the things of Christ, not the things of this world. And Christian and faithful walk in and go, don't try to sell me your wares. I don't want to even hear it. La, 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 la. And that's how we should think of the things of this world. They're fleeting. They're temporary. They're shadows. They're vanities. They don't last. But his kingdom does. So, we've set the stage for what this place is, who is there, what it is they're hawking, and how it is that Christian and faithful find their way in. As we continue, Lord willing, next week, we will see how they then are dealt with in this city as those who don't want to have anything to do with the city itself. And just by way of preview, it ain't pretty.